Hey everyone, let's just dive right into this explainer. Today, we're unpacking a really fascinating divide in the apparel world. We're looking at the massive, multi-billion-dollar global titans on one side and the grassroots, hyper-connected world of psychedelic festival fashion on the other. We usually think of fashion as this one giant monolith, right? But we're going to explore two totally different ecosystems operating on completely opposite philosophies of scale, art, and community. To really grasp the sheer scale of the macro market, we got to start with a staggering number: $30 billion. Yep, that's the revenue generated by Nike alone, the undisputed heavyweight champion of the apparel space. It's a massive economy of scale that literally shapes global supply chains and dictates what the mainstream wears. But as we're going to see, there is an entirely different, thriving movement bubbling up in the underground. So, here's our roadmap for this explainer. We'll start with the global titans, then journey straight into the festival ecosystem. After that, we'll check out psychedelic wearable art, look at materials and functionality, and finally go beyond clothing to see the creative ecosystems driving all this. All right, part one, the global apparel titans, scale and status. Let's look at how the absolute upper echelons of the market are tightly controlled by these heritage and athletic powerhouses. The sheer economic dominance across these sectors is just mind-blowing. These titans leverage massive economies of scale to absolutely dominate their lanes. You've got Nike ruling the performance world with its proprietary moisture-wicking tech and, of course, the cultural weight of the swoosh. Then there's Zara, backed by Inditex, crushing fast fashion with an insanely rapid speed-to-market model that pulls in almost $16 billion. And then look at Louis Vuitton, raking in $10 billion just by turning simple cotton basics into high-status commodities with that iconic monogram. The whole system is built purely on mass reach and dictating trends from the top down. But man, the contrast in philosophy here is wild. On one side, you have the rapid, mass-market churn of fast fashion, literally racing to get runway trends to the rack as cheaply and quickly as possible. But then look at the ethos of independent festival brands like Plasma Lab. It's a complete 180. Their motto, built with respect, not shortcuts. They are all about fair production, working directly with people they actually trust, and flat out rejecting the kind of compromises you have to make for massive global scale. Which leads us nicely into part two, the festival ecosystem, from retail to portals. This is the grassroots alternative, the incredibly vibrant, hyper-niche world of festival streetwear. Now, for brands that are deeply rooted in this alternative culture, retail isn't just about swiping a credit card. It is highly communal. Think about it. When you walk into a regular mall, the goal is purely transactional, right? You buy, you leave. But in the festival fashion ecosystem, physical stores are literally community anchors. They are real-world meeting grounds for the urban tribe. Because of this mindset, these brands completely ditch traditional malls for culturally significant spots, catering to a global, nomadic crowd. Plasma Lab builds what they call portals in places from Berlin all the way to Kolfangen. Silo Fashion drops boutiques in alternative hubs like London's Camden Market, Tulum, and Mexico City. They're basically building physical homes for their tribes, tracking right alongside the global festival circuit. Okay, part three, psychedelic wearable art. Let's actually zoom in on the garments themselves and unpack the deeply symbolic visual language that completely separates this stuff from the minimalist logos of the big titans. Just look at the unbelievable detail here. You are definitely not going to find massive corporate logos stamped across the chest. Instead, it's all about highly intricate sacred geometry, complex mathematical symmetry, and deep spiritual motifs. It's truly wearable art, drawing from ancient symbolism, psychedelic experiences, and nature, all woven together into these incredibly dense, beautiful visual mandalas. And while they all share a broader cultural vibe, each brand brings its own totally unique flavor. Tetra Mode leans hard into mathematical symmetry. Plasma Lab has spent a quarter of a century perfecting this futuristic, cosmic, digital art style. Warrior Within is all about ancient spiritual motifs, while Silo Fashion brings this rugged ethno-punk edge that looks just as cool on city streets as it does at a rave. And then you have Walla Enterprises, pushing for intentional, wearable art that avoids looking like a costume, so you can transition from the festival back to everyday life. Oh, and we're also seeing some really exciting momentum in this space, with a new plus-size brand focusing specifically on relaxed fit 5-sleeve t-shirts, regular fits, and ultra-relaxed tank tops. It's a total game changer, addressing a massive gap in the market and prioritizing true body inclusivity, freedom of movement, and just absolute comfort for everyone in the community. Moving on to part 4,
tech, materials, and festival function. Because, hey, wearable art still has to actually function in the real world, especially when your runway happens to be a multi-day forest rave.
Context is literally everything here. Just imagine surviving 5 days at a rugged, eco-friendly forest gathering like Russia's Chill Out Planet Festival. You're camping, you're battling the elements, and you're constantly on the move. Out there, your clothing has to work just as hard as you do. It can't just look pretty. It has to perform under seriously intense conditions.
And when you look at the music driving this culture, it makes total sense. Energetic electronic genres like downtempo, think artists like Satori, and intense psytrance from artists like Kabayun, they demand absolute physical freedom. People aren't just standing around nodding their heads, they are dancing for hours and hours. That highly active environment heavily dictates exactly how this apparel needs to function. So this creates a massive material divide. The Goliath brands, your Nikes and Under Armours, they rely on proprietary, lab-created synthetic blends for peak athletic performance. But the indie approach? They look straight to nature. These brands rely heavily on lightweight, ultra-breathable natural fibers like bamboo and viscose. Honestly, these fabrics give you that specific, soft comfort and natural temperature regulation you absolutely need to survive long hours, dancing in the blazing summer heat, completely bypassing the need for corporate synthetics.
Now, to actually get those intricate cosmic mandalas onto organic fibers, the industry uses some very specific printing tech. They mix modern DTG, direct-to-garment, and DTF, direct-to-film, right alongside classic heritage screen printing. Why? Well, these methods are carefully chosen to push the ink directly into the fibers themselves. That way, the complex art doesn't just feel like a heavy, sweaty plastic sticker slapped on your chest. It perfectly maintains the natural breathability and the incredibly soft drape of the bamboo fabric. Finally, part 5, Beyond Clothing, a creative ecosystem. Let's look at the ultimate philosophy that truly separates these independent creators from the mainstream giants.
Ultimately, for brands in this space, clothing is literally just one medium among many. They aren't just selling shirts, they're building an entire artistic ecosystem. When a brand like Plasma Lab goes out and builds massive physical stage installations at international gatherings like the Boom Festival, they're using the exact same artistic mindset as when they design a t-shirt. The clothing is really just a wearable extension of a much larger, fully immersive cultural world. Which leaves us with a really fascinating question to ponder. We know fast fashion and luxury titans constantly mine subcultures for their next big trend, right? So as high fashion continues to blur the lines of streetwear, will this deeply symbolic, community-driven world of psychedelic wearable art stay a fiercely protected counterculture secret? Or is it destined to be commodified and turned into the next titan of the global runway? It is definitely something to keep an eye on. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer, and keep exploring.